Imagine an airy workspace that feels like a modern oasis, or a cafe that's cosy and inviting, or a vibrant shopfront that draws customers in. Whatever space you're dreaming up, the IKEA Business Network is here to help you create a better everyday life at work. Join the IKEA Business Network for free and instantly access benefits including a one-on-one with an interior designer, member discounts and perks for your staff and family. So go on, join the IKEA Business Network now at ikea.com.au/business.
Hello and welcome to the latest episode of First Act, a podcast from Koshy's Business Builders. My name is Adam Bubb, I'm a Capricorn, and my favourite wine is a dry Riesling.
Ooh. I'm Cess Busby and I'm a Leo, and my favourite wine is a Gamay. So we're your co-hosts of First Act, the podcast where we dive deep into the diverse and frequently surprising origin stories of Australia's entrepreneurs and innovators.
Now, Cess, between us, we've interviewed probably thousands of people over our media careers, and it never gets old. There's always something about connecting with other people and learning about their dreams, challenges, successes, mistakes, favourite wines, star signs. Look, why not? That all makes us all feel a little more human. So, look, today's guest carries the weight of 180 years of a family business legacy, and it involves wine, doesn't it?
Yes, indeed it does. That's right. Corrina Wright is one of Australia's most respected winemakers. Over the past 30 years, Corrina has been a winemaker and director of Oliver's Taranga Vineyards in South Australia's amazing McLaren Vale. And in that time, she's transformed her family grape supply business into an award-winning wine and tourism enterprise. She's a champion of women and diversity and inclusion in the wine industry, because let's face it was a bit male-dominated for a very long time. And she's even found time to launch a new wine brand, Ehana, with an F1 driver. So, Corrina, welcome to First Act.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Corrina, before we get into your first act, for the average person who doesn't get to be in the vineyards every day, what is daily life like as a winemaker?
Daily life as a winemaker changes from season to season, I suppose. So, we've just actually finished a couple of months ago vintage, and that time of year is hectic. It's very busy. It's tasting grapes. It's having a bit of an acid belly after tasting, grapes all morning. It is making all the wine, and that's our one chance each year to, really represent those wines that are made. And then this time of year, it's bunkering down. The vines are bunkering down. They're getting pruned, and off I go out in the trade and, put on a skirt sometimes and sell some wine and host some dinners, travel to all of our different marketplaces, put some wines into bottle, and the circle continues.
So you come from 6 generations of winemakers, but you didn't always want to be a winemaker, did you?
No, I thought I would be a lawyer to start with. I thought I'd wear a suit every day and, not worry about the seasons. But, yeah, that was pretty quickly foiled. I think as soon as I started traveling overseas, you realise that, the grass is greener. The things that you grow up, when you grow up at a vineyard, you can't wait to get away in a small country town. But, however, that changes once you travel and you realise how lucky you are.
Now, the story goes that you had to pester your grandpa and your uncle to get your hands on some grapes. How tricky was that?
Look, it wasn't really that tricky in the end, because Grandpa was desperate to, have his name on a label and, share a wine with his bowls mates and, swap wines with some of the other local winemakers so he could build up his own cellar. So I think, it was probably pretty easy in the end, and thank God they did.
So even though you come from this massive legacy of winemaking, you're actually the first winemaker in your immediate family. Is that right?
Yeah, so it all been grape growers really before that. The first generation who did come out from Scotland, we had William and Elizabeth came out from Scotland and, proceeded to have 10 children and plant vines and subsistence farming and all the rest of it. And, I can't quite understand why I'm not a whiskey maker rather than a winemaker, but he actually did, it's recorded that he made some wines. He entered them in the, local agricultural shows back in the day. So there was a winemaker. Yeah.
So how did your family react? You just mentioned your grandpa was keen to see his name on a bottle. But how did the rest of the family react to you going, I'm not going to be a lawyer. I'm not going to grow the grapes. I want to actually make the wine.
Yeah, I think my mum was probably slightly disappointed. She had dreams of daughter as a lawyer, I think, and she was like, women don't go back into the farm, don't go back to the family business, and that's not really her choice. That was, the way it was back then. But my grandpa and my uncles and my dad had been in the wine industry for a really long time. He was the general manager at K Brothers for 27 years, just down the road. So I think they were all pretty excited.
In my intro, I spoke a bit about how it is a very male-dominated industry. How have you found it as a woman entering winemaking in Australia? How supportive have the other women in the industry been, and how challenging was it for you?
It's been really interesting journey. I think it's been something that I've been really passionate about because some statistics came out, around 10 years ago saying that there was less than 10% women in production side of winemaking, and but there was 50% going through university, and so we were losing this massive brain drain, and I could see that because every event we went to, there wasn't very many women in the room, and that just really worried me. All the leaders of our industry most of them went to the same school at the time, wore the same outfits, and patted each other on the back for all the decisions that they were making, and which is great. However, there was no diversity of thought in amongst it all, and that really worried me. As a business owner, I think the key to making the best choices is by having lots of different opinions and lots of different people's lived experience to feed that best. That's where the best decisions sort of bubble up from, I suppose, or the best ideas bubble up from. And so started to get quite involved. A colleague of mine, Jane Thompson, has the fabulous Ladies Wine Society, and she also was outraged and she started Australian Women in Wine. I came on board as an inaugural board member, and we originally started just to shine more light on women in the industry and give a few awards out and just show that there are pathways through our industry, which was incredible. And now it's sort of more morphed to, we do symposiums each year and really try to increase the but anyways, the network of people that you can contact and lean on and get through, whenever you have issues, and help you be able to call things out when they need to be called out.
Do you think having that injection of more diverse voices and women in winemaking has also helped boost the innovation within the sector?
I believe it should. We're only up. The new stats have just come out, and we're only up to 15% or something of. So we're not taking over the world quite yet. But yes, I think that anything that brings in new ideas, it's well documented that businesses are better when they've got more diversity inside the business, and that in terms of their economic prosperity, I suppose. And, as a wine community, we've had some pretty significant challenges over the last few years, and, we don't expect that to change. And I think, we have to think about things in a different way.
You mentioned that you're on the action board for Australian Women in Wine, and also the Diversity, Equality and Inclusion in Wine Committee for Australian Grape and Wine. So how far do we have to go in terms of those sort of areas within the industry in sort of the change that needs to happen, and what kind of barriers that are holding people back?
The Diversity and Equality in Wine Committee has, as part of Australian Grape and Wine, plus with the support of Wine Australia, has just actually investing in some more research on diversity in the industry, and that'll be out by the end of the year. CSU is pulling that together for us, which is really exciting. And I think that's going to give us a lot more knowledge as to why we lose so many people. Is it, we know we're not paying us equally. That statistic is already known. So that'd be one fact, I'd say. But, is it the other things that are, standard in all industries, where you sort of either the maternal, cliff, they call it, or the glass ceiling, or those types of things? Is it that? Is it just the fact that, winemaking and grape growing is quite a physical thing, and, during vintage, you've only got that one chance to make those wines. And so, it's a bit 24-hour, and, that's not super conducive sometimes. What is it? What is it that is driving people away from our industry? Is it just that, we're just a bit of a boys' club and people can't be bothered? Or is it that people don't see that, it's a real STEM career and an incredible career to be part of? So we'll learn more when the research comes out. I think there is a relatively long way to go. We have, got a charter now that companies can sign up to. Doesn't really have a big stick though, attached to it. Of course, it's it's the vibe of the thing, but that's a great start. We've got a little way to go. We've also managed to get more people on boards, more women on boards within the industry. We've also when events are on and there's a technical panel, we don't see all men like we have in the past. Slowly but surely.
Can I go back to something that you just mentioned? You were talking about people not seeing the industry as somewhere that there would be a great career option in STEM. So can we dive into that a little bit more? Because I do think that you're right. Most people think about vineyards and winemaking and all they think is the agricultural elements and the hard yards of growing the grapes and all at the mercy of the seasons. Yeah. But yeah, there is this absolute science behind making a great bottle of wine.
Yeah, I mean, it tickles so many different areas because it's one of those things that's like very science, but it's also quite creative and quite artistic as well. So there's like this real, and there's the agriculture side of things. So it's this real sort of melding of a lot of, and plus you can look shiny every now and then when you go out to a fancy dinner. So yeah, it's a real, like, I actually can't think of something that was better suited to me. I'm really lucky that I've been able to find this type of career because it just keeps my brain going in 17 different directions all the time, which is important for my brain. I think people, don't really see it as science. Even, my son was like, "Oh, Mum, I'm going to be a scientist." He's 4, this is when he was about 9 or something. And I said, well, I'm a scientist and, I make, and oh God, that's not science, Mum. That's just, So, I think, you can't be what you can't see. So, making sure that people can see the pathways. And the wine industry also has so many different types of, I'm talking about the production side of things, but there's the, marketing side of things. There's the sales and there's the branding. There's the, business sort of side of it as well. There's the growing, there's the soils, there's the chemistry, like strict chemistry with all the research and things like that. It's a pretty incredible business.
And it's it is a huge business, and there's so many different components to it. In your case, when you and your cousins took over the family business and you joined forces, you had these different skills that you thought, you know what, we can do this. When you think back to that time, like, what was that like? What was that like going, we're gonna take it in a new direction?
It's like boiling a frog, you didn't know it was happening at the time, maybe. But no, I think we're so lucky. I mean, I'm so lucky in my family that my cousins and I, first of all, often in family businesses, when the cousins get together, that's often the break. It's not a particularly conducive period for family businesses, especially, we're 6 generations in. But, I'm so lucky that Bryony and Sam and my cousin Jared as well, who runs down our business down the southeast, we all have very different skills and we all work really well together, and we've all got the same cultural and just soul, I suppose, feeling about this whole business. And I couldn't have done any of what we've done so far without having their support. So it was because I'm 20 years older than my youngest cousin. So I kind of had to barrel my way through a bit. And then Bryony came on board, who's 10 years younger than me. And then Sam came on board. More recently, he's 15 years younger. So in the wine business side of things. And that's enabled like a real level of expansion for us. And it's been, great journey.
So what was the kind of the aha moment then where you went, I want to take this on?
I think it was just sort of, you'll be adding another string to our bow. With the vineyard has been, it's a really beautiful vineyard, 350 acres here in McLaren Vale. It's quite a high end vineyard. We've been selling to, the likes of Penfolds for 50 odd years, and, making some really high quality grapes. So I knew that, we could make some pretty amazing wine from here. Once I'd done all of my training in some of the corporate wineries and travelled around and been overseas and backwards and forwards, I was pretty excited about the opportunity. But, it's a big change from being an agricultural business. In the early days, it was sort of difficult to, that you weren't on a tractor. So if you're not on a tractor all day, you're not working. If you're sitting in front of a computer or you're designing a label, who pays, designers and, things like that. It was just and the understanding of, income sort of coming in all the time. Whereas, in agriculture, you get your big paycheck at this time of year and that's it. So, understanding the differences in the business model, understanding, that marketing is actually a thing. Grape growers never used to worry about marketing. It left their farm gate and they never thought about it again. So, and, didn't give a shit about the winery that it went to and, whinged probably about the winery because they never paid them enough. So that's having a wine business and a brand and all the rest of it is quite a different offering. And I think that was difficult to sort of push through, I think, in the early days. But we were lucky enough to get a non-family chair of a board that everyone sort of respected and sort of bridged the gap between the generations a bit. And, everyone had the great thing was everyone had the overarching, we want this to succeed. This is what we want to do. It was just how we get there, I suppose. But yeah, we've done that now.
So it is a family business, and you mentioned 6 generations in, you're trying to take the business a different way. There can often be tensions. How have you kind of managed to, maintain that balance between honouring the legacy of, these great grape growers, you supplying Penfolds, etc., to starting your own business and innovating in the space?
It's just been a journey, I think. I think that luckily we all have the same ultimate aim. I think, wanting to, and we're pretty competitive, very competitive family. I think that's probably been a real bonus in some ways. My uncle, as a grape grower, is quite a competitive, he's a very competitive sports person as well. I'm the weakest link in terms of sports, so everyone else is really great at all sorts of things. So yeah, that competitive sort of spirit and wanting to achieve and wanting to do well, I think probably drives, but then having that base of, we only see ourselves as caretakers of this land here in McLaren Vale. You've got your first generation and second and third and fourth actually buried on this property. This isn't something that is owned by any of the generations. It's something that is you use, I suppose, during, and you add your little piece of the 6th generation or now 7th generation story, and that enables the land to stay together, and but you can still make an income and have a sort of thriving family business from that.
I'm going to ask you more about the 7th generation part of it soon, but we're going to take a very, very short break and we'll be back with more with Corrina Wright. Corrina, in 2005, you and your cousin Bryony converted the heritage-listed workers' cottage into a cellar door, which is now huge. How much of a turning point was that for you?
Yeah, it was pretty major. We had a really old workers' cottage that the first generation of the family built on the property. I think it was a sneaky way. Back in the day, you were only allowed to have 80 acres at a time. So what they would do is just build another little house on each 80 acres, and it was someone else's. So they the cottage was the one that was really standing still. Had beautiful deep foundations, all made from fieldstone, ironstone and limestone from our property. So we converted that, and that was a real game changer, being able to welcome guests, and it also made us a bit more of a 24-hour a day, 7-day a week type of business. And we managed to, start taking on staff. And then we did a renovation, finished the renovation in 2021, end of right through COVID. And yeah, that's been another game changer. The cottage is very beautiful and is still there, and now is private tasting rooms, but it was tiny, and we had tapped out of space years before, probably.
Everyone's hemmed in. Ooh,
Yeah,
I'm
exactly.
liking my wine.
Yes, that's lovely. So yeah, we were basically about to press go when COVID hit, and we were like, oh God, this is all unknown. Do we still press go or do we not? And we were like, well, we want to have a good news story at the end of COVID, so we will press go.
Mm. What a great news story. Like, it's become a massive tourist destination. So you mentioned as well it became a 7-day-a-week business. So how do you manage that massive growth while still keeping an eye on, the grapes and the wine, the quality of the wine, the customer experience? There's a whole lot of balls that need to be juggled by you now.
I think it's making sure that you understand the culture of your business and how you can infect anyone who works with you with that. It's the cult of Taranga, I'll call it. No, I think that it's so important, your people that you have. I mean, we've been so lucky that some of our first employees, if they weren't family members, they were pretty much family members, like known them forever, and you got that level of trust and understand that they've got the same moral fiber as you, and also care as much as you do, maybe not quite as much as you do, but as much about the business and the land and our story, telling our story. That's been absolutely key. We've been so blessed to have some absolutely incredible staff over the years and still do. I'm very, very thankful for that.
It is all about your people and your culture, isn't it?
Yeah, I think we tried to work out, what it was, what was our fairy dust, what was our special sauce, that we sprinkle on things. And we came down to taking the time for the things that matter. And I think that's sort of a bit of an overarching, it's not an external, business sort of mantra or anything, but it's a very, an internal one. And I think, making sure we celebrate the wins as they come, making sure we recognise, in all of our people, when they're achieving, also when they're not achieving, and when they need something else. We've been very flexible in our workforce because, making sure that we can have longer term people that we don't need to change over every 5 minutes is, incredible. We can invest in everyone. I like to think that we're a pretty strong team. Hopefully, if you spoke to any of my staff, they would say the same thing. So, yeah.
It's the cult of Taranga.
It is, yeah. Special sauce, taking the time for the things that matter.
So talking about taking the time for the things that matter, you also have taken the time to really experiment with the wines that you're producing there. Like, you're well known as being an innovator for producing alternative varietals. So where does that passion for innovating and creating new wines come from, and how complex is that process?
I think, again, I'm lucky to have come from a bit of I didn't see it at the time, but now that I reflect on it, that I've come from a few generations of innovators. My grandpa was always designing a new version of plough that, fit properly through the vine rows, or my uncle down the southeast, designing these incredible shearing sheds that have all the slopes and the everything in, mathematical proportions. And I also found out that we were the first to plant Chardonnay in McLaren Vale back in the 1970s. So, incredible to think that, we were the first in our region. We don't have any Chardonnay on our vineyard anymore. It's not quite right in our region, well, in our vineyard. So I think that is one part of the drive. But then also, we've got we had really great Shiraz and Grenache and incredible red vineyard. And we were really started to want to have explore something in the white space in particular. We live on the coast. McLaren Vale's right on the coast, and we're out catching squid and whiting and garfish, and then coming home and having a big Shiraz with it. I think we got to the point where we were like, geez, we'd like to try something a bit different. And so about 18 years ago, 20 years ago now, we luckily we've got some very blue sky thinkers in our region, and people like Mark Lloyd from Coriol and Chester Osborne from Darrenburg, went travelling and brought back some ideas. And then we have also another incredible family within the wine business who are based in Mildura called the Chalmers family, and they had sort of a lot of forthright vision, seeing what was happening with climate, as well as what was happening with our food and wine culture in Australia. And they formed an alliance with a nursery from Italy, realizing, Italy's got something like 10,000 different grape varieties that, we hadn't even seen here, and started bringing them into Australia. And we were lucky enough to get on board with that in the early days, with Fiano in particular. And it's been incredible.
That's amazing, because you're also a director of Swell Brewing Co., a craft beer made in McLaren Vale. So what have you learned about going from fine wine to craft beer? Because they're very different worlds.
It is a very different world. It's funny, when we were building. So my husband is the brewer and owner, or main guy behind Swell Brewing Co. He had a dream. We met in university. He's a viticulturalist, really. We have our own vineyard as well. And but he is a surfer, and had this dream, traveling around the world, living on $5 a day, sleeping in hammocks on beaches, surfing, that he was going to start a beer business. We'd both done vintages in the US, and at that stage it was the real growth in the US beer scene, craft beer scene, and Australia had zero of that. So he, wrote down all his dream, and eventually we got to bring that to fruition in, started the business sort of in 2010, but the brewery opened at the start of 2019, which was amazing. What I've learned is, because I was interviewing all the staff, for the tap house, and I'm like, you need to know about the region, you need to be able to give, experiences, and need to be able to chat about the flavour profiles of the beers and all that. And anyways, that doesn't turn out to be the case. You just need to be able to pour a beer and be really lovely. And so there's that. Also, beer can be made any time of the year, and it can be made from the recipes are never ending. And whereas wine, I've got one chance each year to try and make something half decent. So there's that side of things. Also, the margins are very different in beer. Also, the big companies, sort of tie up the beer market. That has loosened a little bit in the past in terms of being able to get a tap on at a pub or things like that. Often they were the taps were already bought up. So it was like learning a new business. And also it's a hospitality business, so it's open with food, and we don't really have that here at Oliver's Taranga. So had to speak to chefs, and it was a new language, but incredible to be able to do that with my husband. He's done an amazing job.
And now tell us, there's someone else that you've worked on another business with. How does one start a wine with an F1 driver? Like, I have to picture it. Like, how does that happen?
It's pretty crazy. So what happens is he has his girlfriend is Tiffany Cromwell, who is South Australian, and she is a famous cyclist, women's cyclist. She's based in Monaco, but they come back here for Christmas each year, and it just happens that her mum works with Bryony, my cousin's partner, and anyways, Tiffany or Valtteri Bottas in particular is the Formula One driver we're talking about, and he is particularly keen on wine and has been, for a really long time. It's been a real passion of his, and wherever he goes in the world, he's always, looking at wines. And so Tiffany's mum knew that he was interested and said, why don't you go and see, Bryony's business? So they made a booking to come, and we put an Alfa Romeo at the time, on our golf cart and number 77 on it, and thought, we'll take him around, and we'll take them around, and they'll enjoy it, and they'll have an entourage, and we'll take a couple of photos, and we'll never see them again. But Valtteri came back. They wanted to come back a few times. He wanted to come back, kept on coming back. And I was like, I can't shake this guy. But realised that he was really passionate about wine. He really wanted to, and has a very good palate as well. And eventually the Finnish people are so unlike me, and very polite and quiet and patient. And he eventually asked, would you be interested in doing a collaborative wine? Originally, we probably laughed at him a bit because I was like, oh, well, we're no Pernod Ricard, who have done a collaborative wine with Daniel Ricciardo. We don't have a marketing budget of a worldwide huge brand. And Valtteri was like, no, that's not what I'm looking for. I'm looking for a collaborative wine. I'm looking for a small family business. I want this to be a long-term project. I love your wines. I want this to be quite a different sort of thing. So we eventually said yes, and then the adventure started.
Wow, I mean that's such a compliment. And the wine that we're talking about is called Ihana, for anyone that wants to look it up and try it out. Whether you're into F1 racing or whether you just love wine, I think there's many reasons to give it a try.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's a Shiraz. We'll be bottling in the next couple of months the edition 2, but it's super small batch, and it's sort of been funny going all over the world. Valtteri's obviously got a very big following around the world, and it's been an incredible journey so far.
Have you seen any kind of flow-on impact to the rest of the business because of that collaboration?
Yeah, for sure. It sort of opened up some export markets that we didn't know about. Particularly, we knew about Finland, and but there's a wine monopoly over there in the Nordics, and it's a bit of a longer process to get things in. So we hadn't really bothered Oliver's Taranga wise, but that's opened a lot more opportunities. We also last year bought a winery business, we bought a winery, or the winery we were processing at, and it's a contract processing business. But Valtteri and Tiffany are also involved in gravel bike racing, cycling, and so they bought the Raddle Gravel. So Raddle is the Radelaide, short for Radelaide, Raddle Gravel event, of which they had one is in Steamboat Springs in Colorado, and then one's in Finland in Valtteri's hometown, and now we have one in McLaren Vale, and they use the Oliver and Press winery site as where they set up all the the town for Raddle Gravel. So incredible different opportunities that came our way.
It's incredible. I mean, yeah, we've gone through so many different kind of moments, even in this chat on your journey and your various, your first act to where you are now. When you think about what you've been through, and then you mentioned the future generation, and you mentioned the 7th generation and their involvement, how much is there an expectation that they are part of that family legacy that you've been a part of as well?
Yeah, I mean, everyone hopes that there'll be some sort of continuation, that's for sure. We don't want to be the 6th generation, be the one to stuff it up and lose it all for everyone. My daughter, I have a 22-year-old daughter. She's told me that if she ends up a winemaker in McLaren Vale, she will have failed at life. So she has different aspirations.
Does she want to be a lawyer?
No, she wants to be in the film industry, which is behind the cameras though. So she's starting off, and she wants to live in a tiny apartment in a very big city. So she really hates living in the middle of a vineyard, just with glorious space all around us. Anyways, that's amazing. And then my son Cohen is 14, and he at the moment wants to be a pilot, but we'll see where that. But he loves all sorts of engineering. He knows all about the business. He's just. We may have started a small entrepreneur because he has a chicken egg business that he's keeping his spreadsheet on and hasn't managed to make a profit yet because he had to invest in all of his chickens first and their feed. But that's going well for him. And then my cousin Bryony has 2 small boys, but they're like sort of 6 and 4. So they're a little way behind, but both absolutely love machinery at the moment. I think more importantly, whether they do or they don't, and who does and who doesn't, I don't want that to be a pressure point. I want them to, be able to come into it if it's something that they want to do. I think the great thing about what we've managed to build now is that it's not just people who want to be working in agriculture only, on the tools type of people were the only ones that we could attract back into the business in general. Previously, now there's it's a much wider range of roles that the business needs, including probably a lawyer. Stage. So
Like any business, yeah, that's
yeah,
right.
exactly. My cousin Sam, he came back from KPMG, and he was working in sort of that business development team, where they go into other businesses and sort of tell them how to fix, their business, and then shoot out and don't have to deal with any of their suggestions. Where now he's stuck with us now, so he has to. And I mean, he's incredible as well. Got all the different skills, and he's of another generation from me, so more tech savvy, and very smart finance wise, and all the rest of it. So we're super lucky.
I think we've only got time for one last question before we go. So probably bringing it back to the beginning in terms of entrepreneurial advice for other female entrepreneurs that might be trying to, start something up, and they may be in an industry that is male dominated. What would your advice be for them for how they can go against the grain and keep moving forward?
I think just making sure you got some people around you that can help lift you up, whether they be other females or male champions, or just champions around you. And also, I mean, there has to be a level of confidence in what you're doing, but also being true to yourself. I think the only way I've worked out, over these million years, 30 years or whatever, is making sure that you're authentic to what you do, keeping that authenticity and making sure that you're not giving away any of that on the quest to, your greatness, because I think that's where doubt creeps in, where, you're not as passionate behind it and you can't drive stuff. I don't know. That's my words of wisdom.
That's a great. No,
What
it's
it's
a great.
worth.
No, that's true.
Don't give away your authenticity. I can just see it on T-shirts right now.
That could be
Honestly.
the next quote for our vintage, end of vintage 2025. Don't give away your authenticity.
It's like a daily mantra that people need to have in there. Yeah.
Corrina, thank you so much. That's all we've got time for today. We'll need to pay a visit to South Australia and go to Oliver's Taranga in McLaren Vale. Thank you so much for joining us.
That's all right. Thank you so much for having me. Oh, I'm a Capricorn, by the way.
Oh, another Capricorn. Oh, okay, right. I'm January 9.
And my favourite wine is every wine. So
we really should get in the habit of asking those questions at the beginning. Thank you to everyone for listening. This has been another cracking episode of First Act, if I don't say so myself. We love making these and would love you to subscribe, pop a 5-star review on Apple or wherever you listen to podcasts, and we'll keep making more. We'll be back in 2 weeks with our next exciting guest. See you then.
Bye.